Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely wild. We're unpacking the real biological science and the historical mass panics behind humanity's ultimate monster, the vampire. We're going to see how a mix of genuine human tragedy, totally misunderstood science, and just a sprinkle of Hollywood magic birthed the most famous creature of the night. Let's get right into it.
You know, it's so easy for us to brush off vampires as just spooky fiction, right? But the actual truth, it's way stranger and honestly a lot more tragic. So what if the monsters we fear the most were actually just biology misunderstood? We're going to explore how devastating, unexplained diseases and the completely natural, but pretty gruesome process of human decay literally created these terrifying legends that swept across the globe.
But before we dig into the hardcore science, we really need to grasp the sheer scale of this myth. Look at this quote from TV tropes. As many species of vampire as there are beasts of prey. It is spot on. Vampire lore is incredibly diverse. Almost every single culture has its own take on an undead bloodsucker, like the Lamia in Greece or the Aswang in the Philippines. It's basically a massive global grab bag of traits.
Okay, Section 1. The modern vampire myth.
So, when we picture a vampire today, we're thinking fangs, right? Garlic, turning into bats, bursting into flames in the sun, the whole shebang. But here is the crazy part. That deadly weakness to sunlight? Totally made up by Hollywood. Specifically, it was a cinematic invention from the 1922 movie Nosferatu. It's not ancient folklore at all. The original literary vampires, like Dracula, they just lost a little bit of their mojo during the day. So much of what we consider ancient rules are just 20th century Hollywood inventions.
Let's move on to Section 2. Digging up the dead.
So here are the historical heavy hitters that anchored the myth. On the left, we've got the brutally famous 15th century Romanian prince, Vlad the Impaler, the guy who actually inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula. And on the right, the infamous blood countess, Elizabeth Bathory, who allegedly bathed in the blood of young women to stay young. But look, while these wealthy aristocrats inspired the fiction, the real vampire panics, those happened among terrified, everyday peasants.
The genuine, historical vampire panics looked a whole lot more like this. Back in the 1700s across Europe, you had terrified villagers literally digging up corpses in the dead of night because they truly believed these bodies were feeding on the living. Take the famous 1725 case of Peter Plagowicz. He died and suddenly other villagers started dropping dead too. Superstition took over, they dug him up and, well, they found what they thought was absolutely undeniable proof of a vampire.
But what were those villagers actually looking at? Well, it was just a massive misunderstanding of how a body breaks down. As a corpse decomposes, the skin and gums dehydrate and pull back. That makes it look like the hair, nails, and teeth are actually growing. Then internal gases build up, blowing up a starved body to look bloated and well-fed. Finally, those gases push this dark, bloody byproduct called purge fluid right out of the mouth. So to a peasant in the 1700s, that's a vampire with fresh blood on its lips. To us, it's just step 3 of decomposition.
And we have to remember, these panics weren't just spooky campfire tales. They were real, heartbreaking human tragedies. Take the 1892 case in Rhode Island. A grieving father, George Brown, is watching his family die from some mysterious wasting illness. Desperate, the town actually convinces him to dig up his dead wife and daughters. They find 19-year-old Mercy Brown with that purge fluid we just talked about in her heart. So what do? They burn her heart to ashes and feed it to her sick brother as a cure. And it didn't work. He died shortly after. Just devastating.
Which brings us to Section 3, the disease connection.
To really understand why these panics happened, you have to look at the diseases ravaging these towns because the symptoms perfectly matched a supposed vampire attack. Tuberculosis caused this horrible blistering fever, coughing up blood, and literally wasting away, like a monster was slowly draining your life. Then you have rabies, causing animalistic biting, frothing at the mouth, and an intense hypersensitivity to light and strong smells, like garlic. Before germ theory existed, people needed an explanation, so they blamed the supernatural.
So, desperate to stop these plagues, communities turned to extreme anti-vampire burials. Archaeologists are still digging these up today. In Poland, they found graves where sickles were placed right across the neck, so if the corpse tried to sit up, it would decapitate itself. They used padlocks on toes, shoved heavy rocks into mouths, they even scattered poppy seeds in the dirt. Why? Because folklore said vampires were totally obsessive and had to count every single seed before they could leave the grave. Wild, right?
Okay, let's pivot to Section 4, real-life bloodsuckers.
The contrast between the movies and biological reality here is huge. Your cinematic vampire is sleek and immortal, right? But biological hematophagy, which is the scientific term for feeding on blood, is incredibly messy. Blood is mostly liquid, so actual blood feeders like mosquitoes and vampire bats have to rapidly urinate while they eat just to process the sheer volume of water. Mosquitoes even secrete a drop of waste to evaporatively cool themselves down so they don't literally overheat while drinking warm blood. A biologically accurate vampire wouldn't be glamorous. They'd be bloated, sweating, and constantly peeing.
Plus, mammals like us, our digestive systems just aren't built for it. Safely digesting blood and avoiding heme toxicity, which is a really nasty toxic byproduct when hemoglobin breaks down, is an unbelievably difficult physiological demand. Out of over 1 million known species of insects and arachnids, only about 14,000 specialized species have actually mastered it. They had to evolve these super elaborate systems of vasodilators and anticoagulants just to survive this bizarre diet.
Moving on to our final section. Section 5, the real magic of blood.
Now, this sounds like it's straight out of a sci-fi horror movie, but it is 100% real science. It's a procedure called heterochronic peribiosis. Researchers basically take a young mouse and an old mouse, and they surgically suture them together so they share a single combined vascular system. The blood from the young mouse continuously pumps right through the older mouse, and vice versa.
And the results of these experiments? Absolutely astonishing. Sharing that young blood literally reverses aging markers in the older subjects. We're talking about the brain generating new neurons, improved learning, and even reversing age-related heart issues, essentially healing an old, failing heart. The catch is, the young mice experience accelerated aging from the old blood. So, blood-borne rejuvenating factors genuinely exist? It brings this creepy, very factual layer of realism to the eternal vampire legend.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. For centuries, the vampire myth was just a coping mechanism, a way for our ancestors to make sense of terrifying diseases and the really macabre realities of death. But today, as modern researchers literally isolate the rejuvenating properties hidden inside young veins, the line between ancient folklore and cutting-edge medicine is really starting to blur. If science truly unlocks the power of blood to halt aging and disease, are we on the brink of scientific immortality? And if so, what kind of monsters might we become to achieve it? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.